Welcome, and thank you for tuning in to the Brothers Grime podcast. And now, your hosts, Brandon and Randall Witherspoon. Enjoy the show.
Yeah, so Randall will not be joining us today. He's out this week, unfortunately. We really miss that guy. So filling in for Randall will be the Father Grime.
Yes.
I'd like to welcome Mark Randall Witherspoon to the podcast.
Thank you.
Glad to have you, and I'm sure this will not be the last time we have you on the show.
Well, it's great to be here, but I wish it was under better circumstances. But I like that, Father Grime. I was going to suggest that versus the Daddy Grime.
Papa Grime.
Yeah, that was a bit too gritty.
Padre Grime.
I'm liking the Father Grime.
Father Grime. Goes with the gray beard you're wearing, my friend.
It's almost religious.
I don't know if I'd go that far.
Okay.
So what I wanted to do, first thing, right out of the gate, for those of you that are listening that don't know Randall or I personally, I kind of wanted to give a little bit of background info on Randall Witherspoon, one of the original Brothers Grime. He's quite an amazing fellow. He's a really, really great guy. Everybody that knows him or meets him just loves him. He's a one-of-a-kind dude with a very unique personality, and he's just a likable character, full of energy. Great guy. But he's extremely tough. He's been through a lot in his life. Those of you that know him already know this, but like I said, for those of you who don't, just want to give you a little background info on the guy. So, Randall, when he was 7 weeks old, I believe. Is that right? 7 weeks, 8 weeks?
7 weeks. When
he was 7 weeks old, he underwent a heart transplant, a hypoplastic left heart, right?
That's correct.
So that was, I believe at the time, it was the youngest procedure like that done in the state of Virginia, where we grew up.
Yeah, that's correct.
So
that's what we were told at the time.
A major operation.
Yes.
And so for the past 26 years, he's 26 now?
2 years younger than you.
26. So for the past, he'll be 26 in June, he's 25. So for almost the past 26 years, he's been carrying around somebody else's heart in his body, which is pretty amazing. And he's doing great. He's alive and kicking, as you guys hear every episode. So he's very blessed and very strong because of that. He also went on to develop cancer at the age of around 12, right? 10 or 12? How old was he?
I don't know the exact age. You got me on the spot there.
As if
I
having a heart transplant wasn't
15.
enough. 15? He could have been older, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere in his mid-teens. Yeah, he developed cancer. What kind of cancer was it?
It was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Non-Hodgkin's.
And the whole irony of it all was basically caused by the very medicine that he needed to not reject his heart. So it was
the anti-rejection medicine was actually causing cancer all the while.
Yes.
Wow.
One of the side effects of the medicine.
Medicine that he has to take.
Absolutely.
He can't get around it. He'll be on it for the rest of his life.
No, that's true. Luckily, lots of new medicines have come out since then. That one was rather nasty. It's one of the first ones, and it's strong, and it had a lot of side effects. It did what it was supposed to do well, but
right.
Not without some consequences. So they were able to change his medication, get him on a new, better type that doesn't have that type of ill side effects. And so he's been off that for quite a few years. And that's true with lots of medicines. There's lots and lots of medicines that have side effects that are almost worse than what they are made to cure. But
indeed, in that case, you didn't have a choice, though.
Right? Absolutely.
Yeah, and so he battled with that. He went through chemotherapy. It was a rough time for all of us, obviously. All the side effects of chemo applied directly to him and everything, but it proved to be worth it all in the end, as he is now cancer-free and has been so since for 10 plus years, 11 years, almost 12 years, something like that.
Yes.
So he is a fighter. He's a tough guy, and he's been through through a lot, That's for sure, undeniably. And the reason that he's not here today, he, like I said, for those of you who don't know, Randall is an avid skateboarder. He's fantastic. He's a great skater. He's been skating, forever, and he loves it. So he was down at a local skate park by himself. I think it was maybe after work. He likes to go down there and skate and unwind and that kind of stuff. And so he was skateboarding and had an accident. He was I think he was on some kind of a quarter pipe or something, and somehow the board went sideways and went flying, and as did he. He came down like really, really hard and landed right on his butt, and then, the momentum went from, his fall. He landed right on, like I said, his butt, and then his head went flying backwards, and he cracked the back of his head on straight up concrete. It's a total concrete park. And so the physical injury to his head was on the back of his head. In doing so, the momentum jolted his actual brain forward inside of his skull, bouncing it off the front of his skull. So the injury to his brain was more to the front right side of his brain, right? And the physical injury to the head was in the back, obviously. So major concussion, and one of the many medications Randall is on due to his heart conditions and having since had stents put in and stuff is he's on lots of blood thinners and aspirin and that kind of stuff. So he experienced some bleeding and bruising in the brain as a result of his accident, and was somehow able to get up. He doesn't believe that he lost consciousness, but he wouldn't really know if he did. We were unable to reach anybody who was actually there because there were other people at the park when this happened. But somehow or another, being as tough as he is, was able to get up and drive himself to the nearest hospital, which luckily was only a couple blocks away. And they, checked him out, and they gave him a CAT scan and, noticed that there was bleeding going on inside of his head, so they rushed him in an ambulance straight to UVA, a major hospital down in Charlottesville, and he went straight into ICU. And he spent, 2 days in ICU?
Yes.
2-3 days, something like that.
Monday night in the emergency room, straight to neurology ICU. He was released Wednesday, so Monday night, Tuesday night.
Right.
2 nights and 2 days. 2 days, 2 nights. And miraculously was released Wednesday, which is great. It's fantastic. It's not uncommon to be discharged directly from the neurology ICU, as odd as that sounds. But they know pretty quickly if you're going in the right direction or not. And once they stop giving you any kind of meds and you're, in the clear for any life-threatening problems, they get you out of there.
Yeah, there's really no need to be in intensive care at that point.
No.
Yeah,
But,
so go ahead.
I was just going to say, so that, having said that, that's wonderful news. He's out. But he's got such a long, slow course ahead of him. He's certainly not out of the woods. He's out of the unknown danger. When you first come in there, they don't know how bad it's actually going to be or how bad it's going to peak out. But he has such a long recovery ahead of him, long and slow. So he's just because he's out and released, he's still under close observation and
Right.
came home on anti-seizure medicine. So
Right, as a precaution.
yeah, the brain bleed, as they refer to it, anytime there's blood between your skull and your brain, can aggravate the brain and cause it to seize, cause you to go into seizures. That's always possible. The swelling from a bruise in the brain causes pressure, and sometimes they have to surgically intervene on that. But luckily, thank God, they didn't have to do any of that with Randall. They didn't have to do anything but just observe him. They can't give you any kind of narcotic painkillers. That kind of masks any of the effects that you might have.
Right, because the observation that he's under is basically him being interrogated a little bit, asked questions to test memory, to test, responsiveness.
Cognitive
yes, so obviously it would be difficult to test that if he was under the influence of a narcotic and way out of it, which he's not out of it, by the way. He's very tired and stuff, which is typical of a head injury like that. So yeah, it's going to be a really, really slow recovery for him. He's bummed. He would love to be here. Obviously, he can't, and he's excited that we're moving forward and keeping the wheel rolling and getting this podcast out. So it means a lot to him that we're here doing this, and he will be back as soon as possible. He's wanting to roll for sure. So definitely keep Randall in your thoughts, and
Prayers.
and we will definitely keep you guys who listen posted and updated as much as possible. But what's odd is my brother and I have always had a really, really close relationship. And so this isn't the first time it's happened, what I'm about to tell you. I guess was it Monday night was the night of the accident?
Yes.
Okay, so I'd had a long day at work, and I came home, and my youngest son, is big into baseball, so I coach baseball, and I was out coaching baseball after work, and it lasts from like 6 to 8, so about 8 o'clock, 8:15, we wrapped up practice and came home, and when I got home, I just had a weird sense about myself. First of all, Randall immediately popped in my head for some reason. He was just on my mind, which was interesting. I just had Randall pop into my head. And I thought about calling him, but it was kind of hectic. We were trying to get dinner ready and everything like that and get the kids sat down and eat and, have a normal Monday night routine after practice, right? And I literally sat down at the table after just feeling that way. And almost, I was almost kind of, what's the best way of describing it? Like, I could sense something was wrong. I don't know why. And Randall popped into my head. And so, that was kind of in the back of my mind. Yeah, I just had this overwhelming concern for some unknown reason. And all I could think about was Randall. For some reason, it was weird. And I thought about calling him. I really did. But, it was kind of hectic at the time. So the wife's running around where I'll finally get sat down at the table to eat. Then my phone rings, and it's my mom calling to inform me that Randall had just had an accident. So that was unbelievable. It was almost, it was really strange how that happens. And, I've heard a lot of talk about siblings and, immediate family having some sort of bond that's non-visible and sensing that kind of stuff, almost like a sixth sense when it comes to that kind of stuff. And like I said, it's not the only time that's happened to me under different circumstances, not just Randall either, but mostly Randall. We're close in age, we're brothers, we've always been really close, and so it's just interesting how that happens, and some people experience that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it is interesting, and you're right, it isn't the first time it's happened, because it actually has happened when you were young, and you might not even remember some of the times, but your mother and I had noticed that same type of just, extra sensory perception that you had, not necessarily, ESP, but like,
right.
And not a premonition, like you knew something was going to happen beforehand or not. It's kind of like as it happened, like you were so in tune that you knew.
Could almost feel what he was feeling, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What is an example of that when I was young?
Well, the one greatest example that stands out in my mind, that I'll never forget, obviously, was you were 2. And, Randall was actually in the operating room receiving his heart transplant. Randall's 7 weeks old. Brandon's 2 years old. He's going in, he's been in for
he's
hours.
Under the knife, he's in surgery.
He's actually having the transplant done. We're in the waiting room. It's in the middle of the night. We're all trying to rest, making beds out of chairs and different things. And there's quite a few people there with us. We got Brandon settled. He was finally sound asleep. Pushed 2 chairs together, made a little bed out of it. He was sleeping, sound asleep. Before the surgery started, they told us about how long it would take, and they would, get right with us as soon as it was done and keep us posted how everything was going. So as we were all kind of just nodding off, and it had been probably however long the procedure took, I can't remember now, but it had been, it'd been a couple hours probably. Brandon sits up, straight up out of the makeshift bed, and says, "Randall just got his heart." And we all looked at each other and said, "Well, that's nice, Brandon. Going back to sleep now." And he laid his little head back down, and we all kind of thought that was kind of cute. And a few minutes later, about half an hour later, however long it was, the elevator doors open. Doctors come walking in. Said, "Randall just got his heart about half an hour ago." About exactly the same time Brandon raised up and announced it to us.
It's powerful, man.
Yeah. It was amazing. How did he know? That's all we could all think about, because it was that apparent that, we weren't reaching to try to put things together to make it sound like a story. Everyone thought the exact same thing. Like, oh my gosh, that's what Brandon said at pretty much the exact same time. As a matter of fact, they gave us a time, and when he woke us up, someone kind of looked at the clock and made a mental note of what time it was, and then when they came back and told us exactly what time he got his heart, it was exactly such and such time. That was like pretty much within exactly the same time that it all lined up.
Wow. Very
interesting.
It is. It really is. And kids especially seem to be more in tune to that kind of stuff. You hear a lot of stories. There's a lot of stories out there about children specifically, almost as if they can see the other side, or they're in tune to another dimension or something that we can't see. And I find that stuff incredibly interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. I think that children are in tune, definitely,
on a different level.
And extra sensitive to things that we have kind of grown out of or blotted out because of other things in our life that our mind is on constantly, that interfere with that. They're so innocent and in a different world. They're not in the grown-up world yet, and so we kind of tend to, if we had those when we were children, pushed them aside as we grew up and no longer have that capability to, the children are just sensitive to things like that. They really understand people's feelings. They can see it.
I agree.
And as I can see with my fourth son, Kyle, who has Down syndrome, he is extra sensitive and aware of feelings of anyone's. It doesn't really matter. I almost said particularly his mother's, but actually if I think about it, it's everybody. He absolutely can sense when you are stressed about something, or you don't even have to be saying anything. He can just tell from your body language or whatever it is.
And what are some indications that he picks up on that kind of stuff?
Well, all the time. He'll come up to you, lay a hand on you, say, it'll be all right. It's going to be okay.
Just out of the blue.
Out of the blue. Or, "I love you, Mom. I love you, Dad."
And he's how old?
Well, he's 7.
Right.
But he's about the size of a 4 or 5-year-old, physically.
Right.
He is in kindergarten, so he's about the size of a kindergartner. Super intelligent, but super sensitive, but super in touch with other people's emotions and just kind of mental state. I mean, amazingly in touch with that, to the point where he is such a comfort because he knows right when to comfort you. It's not always sad things either. It's
right.
He obviously, picks up on the vibe in the room, but it goes beyond that. He seems to know and is very, very affectionate and
right.
wants everything to be right all the time and happy all the time, and just a great kid all around. Love
He
him.
is very sweet. Can learn a lot from kids, I think, If we could all go
Absolutely.
back to, in certain ways, thinking how a child thinks, we'd be a lot better off, I think,
Yeah, in some ways.
In some ways, obviously.
Yep.
And they definitely look at things in a very different perspective, but they can also put things into perspective for you. If you take a minute to step back and listen to what a kid is saying, it can be a real eye-opener in certain aspects. I've found that to be true with my kids, and not only my kids, but other kids as well. We as adults get kind of narrow-minded and focused on what's going on, and with work or with whatever is happening right now, and they can kind of, it's almost like like I said, they're looking at everything from a different perspective. They take a step back and they see things differently, and in a good way a lot of times.
Yeah, in a simplistic way.
Very simplistic.
Break it down.
Which simple is good.
Yeah, and kids don't normally have any filters either. They tell you exactly what's on their mind, exactly how the way they see it. And they don't necessarily mean anything bad by it. But
kids say the darndest things.
They do. They'll tell you exactly how they see it. And sometimes that opens your eyes to, wow.
I don't know if I should be making Cosby references anymore.
We won't get there.
No. Old Bill Cosby.
No, that's a whole another episode.
Yep. We'll save that for another time.
I wanted to say in the beginning, when you were giving me that grand intro, that this is like the father clone edition.
The father clone edition.
Yeah. Yep. The father clone. So, for those of you who can't tell, Brandon's in the left speaker. I'm in the right.
I'm not having an interview with myself. Not only do we think alike, act alike, we look a lot alike.
I was told that
we're mistaken for brothers often.
Yes, I was told once by my wife that he was not my son, and that initial shock that hit me, I didn't even know what to say. Before I could reply, she followed that up with, "He's your clone."
Thankfully.
So, if that gives you any idea.
Indeed. As you pour another cup of coffee. Yeah. What kind of coffee is this? He was graciously enough, he was so gracious as to bless me with a cup of some sort of exotic coffee that is absolutely delicious.
What is Jamaican.
Jamaican
Coffee. Jamaican, man.
You don't usually drink Jamaican.
I thought I'd give it a whirl. I just kind of had that island spirit going on or something.
Oh, it's a good spirit to have. I'm about ready for a trip to the islands.
It's quite tasty, isn't it?
It is great.
It's mellow, smooth, not bitter. I like it slightly smoky.
Yes. This guy right here is an absolute coffee nut, by the way.
Connoisseur.
Sure, we can call it that. But anywho, I know that you had been telling me about some books that you had read starting about the beginning of this year. I'm actually looking at them. We're sitting here recording from the mountain studio deep in the wilderness, and this guy is so interesting. There's so many interesting things sitting around, from books, vinyl albums, strange artifacts, a walking stick with a Morel mushroom on top of it. Very, very interesting stuff. But I see you have a pile of books over there, and I think those are the ones you said that you had read so far this year, right?
That's correct.
And a lot of them were about biology and stuff like that, right?
Well, actually, biology comes into play, I guess, a little bit of science. Started out the year, I was going to try to read as many books as I could this year, and was going great guns, I think, I was going to try to average like a book a month, and I was actually ahead of the game. In February, I think I had 4 books down, starting on the 5th, and then reality set in, and I realized that was impossible, so I kind of dropped the book reading for a while, much regretfully, at as I do a lot of things, I'll start and then something will happen and I'll...
Life.
Yes.
Yep, I'm well aware.
No, the books I started reading, actually, deep subject, maybe too deep for this episode. But,
Maybe not.
Just books on creationism versus evolution.
Interesting.
Everything from, astronomy to anthropology to biology to everything from astronomy to genetics, actually.
Cool.
So I
I
had
dig
several cool books that written by scientists, some Christians, some not. So big, broad topic. Each book kind of focused on its own particular piece of all that we were talking about, whether it would be astronomy or anthropology, whichever. Each book was a little slightly different topic, but we're all under the compass of creationism versus evolution. And
Very interesting.
yeah. So as you can tell, it's a huge topic with lots of brilliant people that know much more than you or I about it.
No doubt.
Very interesting, very enlightening, and it's great stuff. Some of the books are written very easy to understand, and
Which is not usually too common when you're talking about those kind of topics. A lot of them are probably way over most people's head, and hard to understand, I would imagine.
yeah, I
So
tried
that's
to
cool.
read. There are some books I've tried to read that were just almost too hard to understand, and for me. But I gave them a shot. But these last four that I read, I would recommend them to anyone that was interested. Actually, when I get done with the books, I like to hand them off to people that are interested in the same thing, and
I'll take those.
Yeah, I make little notes and highlight, and then it gives me some food for thought and conversation. And but I've been out of it now for quite a few months. As I said, that was probably February, and here we are, middle of April. So
Right. Put you on the spot.
if you had hit me a couple months ago, I was like
It would have been right there.
yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of that walking stick I'm looking at over there with the morel mushroom, it's really cool, like a hand-carved morel mushroom. They took the top of the walking stick and carved out this mushroom. It's awesome, which I think morel season is approaching us, if not already here.
Oh,
Am I
it's
right?
here.
It's here. Morel mushrooms. Talk about that for a minute for people that don't know anything about morel mushrooms. I'm not going to go too deep into mushrooms, as that was like a quarter of my or half of my episode last week. But yeah, morel mushrooms specifically. We can't get away from
Here
them.
we are back to the mushroom topic again. Like father, like son.
Yeah, absolutely. Tasty,
Couple of
and
shroomers.
interesting.
So, I acquired the shrooming stick.
Oh,
As
that's
it's
what it's
referred to.
called. The shrooming stick.
Yeah, I acquired the
I
shroom,
like it.
the shroom stick, actually. The shroom stick.
Shroom stick.
From shrooming stick would be something different. We won't go there. The shroom stick is supposed to help you find the mushroom somehow, magically, I guess. I don't know.
Oh, it possesses an ancient and
It just keeps
powerful-
the snakes away or something. I don't know what it does. You can lift leaves and lift plant, things.
we're not
and kind of poke
talking
around.
mysticism. We're just talking about functionality.
Yeah, but those little devils are quite sneaky. It's been said that they'll actually wait till you walk by and then they'll pop up. So you talk to some of the West Virginia mojo men that pick
Self-proclaimed
morels
experts.
and hunt ginseng and dig ramps and things like that.
Right.
All that West Virginia mountain lore stuff. They'll tell you some interesting things about the morel mushroom, the elusive morel mushroom, which if you talk to the older guys that have been doing it for a long time, they refer to the morels as miracles. That's what they call them.
Merkles?
Miracles, but that's how they actually pronounce it, Merkles. So if you ask them about morels, they or if you hear them talking about miracles, that's what they're talking about, the Morel mushroom. I guess because it's a miracle to find one.
That
until you
difficult.
come upon a patch, and then you're set. But yeah, it's a very interesting. I found it. I found it very interesting. It falls right in there in the spring, this time of year. This is when they pop up.
And there's a very, very small window of time to harvest these things, right? They only grow.
That's correct.
During a very small window of time, right?
Right, and it could vary by a couple of weeks or so when the peak of the Morel mushroom season is, depending on the rain. Obviously, it's a fungi, so it needs a lot of water.
Right.
And but literally, they will pop up overnight. You can hit an area, and they won't be there. Go back the next day, and they're there standing tall.
Wow.
Like 2-3 inches tall, and they grow that fast.
That's
They
wild.
literally push the leaves right up. And I've heard stories that they like lay down, and then they'll pop up. Like suddenly,
Really?
like people have been sitting there up against a tree, and all of a sudden one just popped up,
Springs
literally
up.
stood straight up in front of them,
That's
and
unbelievable.
just flipped the leaf right off. That's what I've heard. Haven't actually witnessed it.
So they can almost find you.
And they'll pop up behind you as you pass them, so they know that they know that you've gone past, so it's okay. Coast is clear, and they'll pop up.
So they may even have a collective consciousness here.
They may. I mean, plants. We don't know that much about them.
Not a plant, though.
That's true.
We don't know
But,
what they are.
Organism.
Some sort. Very cool. But yeah,
yeah.
that thing's wild. And there's so many different species of mushrooms out there, and all of them look unique and crazy. Some of them look a lot alike. But the Morel, if you guys haven't ever checked one out, I'll put a link to it in the show notes. But definitely take a peek at a Morel mushroom. They're definitely one of the most interesting looking mushrooms and unique looking mushrooms I've ever seen.
Right, and they're easy to identify. Not easily confused with anything poisonous. Nothing else looks like them. So
Although I do believe there's such thing as a false Morel.
there is a false
right?
Morel, but
It's non-toxic or anything, right?
well, no, it's toxic.
Is it toxic?
Yeah, but it really has some of the same characteristics in the way it's. I guess not. I don't even want to say shaped. It really doesn't. Look like one. It doesn't
It's just
stand
the only
like
other
one.
mushroom that kind of is anywhere near similar to the Morel. Huh?
Yeah, and
So
it
you'd have to be a
really
complete and
is
total-
not. It's a different color. Sometimes they're black. They're laying flat. They don't stand up like a Christmas tree.
Gotcha.
There's just lots of things
It's the only
about
thing that you could possibly mistake for Morel,
possibly.
which is why, disclaimer, you should definitely not go out and pick wild mushrooms and consume them if you don't know what you're doing.
absolutely not.
It's not safe to do that. So make sure you're well educated before you venture off to go shrooming.
Right. And I've actually read that there's a mild toxicity to any mushroom that we've eaten. If you ate too many of any kind of mushroom, that there's a level of toxicity in there that could affect you. So, as with anything, small quantities are good.
Moderation.
And yeah, the cool thing about if you ever do find them and you ever do pick them, you're supposed to. A lot of guys will carry like pantyhose or something that is a mesh net that they'll drop the mushrooms in, so they'll spread the spores around. They'll shake them, and they won't completely uproot them. They'll break them off and shake them around that spot, and then drop them into the bag. And as you're heading out of the woods, you're dropping spores all around as to keep the brood going.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. I never knew that. Very cool.
And then they require really good washing. They're covered in these little black bugs.
Really?
Yeah, you don't see them until you start washing, and out they come.
Weird.
Yeah, very strange. But
Yeah, that's cool. Yep. Could talk all day about mushrooms. We won't do
Yes.
that. We'll spare you guys, but we could, just so you know. And something else that's been catching my eye is that really, really cool chessboard you have over there. And the chess pieces on it are very cool as well. This is like a extra large chess table. It's got 4 legs and it stands probably about 3 feet in height. Very cool vintage chessboard you have there. I'm not sure. The pieces match beautifully too because they're like I said, they're large pieces to go with the large board. Very cool. We love chess. We used to play all the time. Spar. and have a great time. You got me into it at a young age, so I developed a love for chess. And what an awesome game! The guy who invented it, I don't know who it is, but it was he was awesome, and it's very, very cool. Love it. Strategic game, lots of planning, lots of carefully plotting and planning and thinking about every move that you make as it could be your last.
Yes, as you know, I get into collecting different things and have over the years. I'm not what you'd call a hoarder or anything, but
Tasteful hoarder.
I'll get interested in something like chess and playing chess and chess boards, and then I'll think about, just about the game from where it originated to all the greats that have mastered it, and then the different pieces. I find them intriguing, and they're traditionally, just depends on where they come from, what they're made of. So
right, especially the wooden ones, as you are a wood connoisseur as well.
Yes, a wood nut.
A wood nut.
But traditional English, I guess, chess set be boxwood for the white pieces and ebony for the dark pieces. That's your traditional Stanton or Staunton, depending where you're from. It's your most traditional chess set you can get. It's a good one to start with. It's when you look for weighted pieces, and then if you can find the hand carved pieces, of course, it's a lot more expensive, a lot more valuable, a lot more collectible.
One of a kind.
Yeah, and my favorite piece of all is the knights. Especially a lot of the pieces are turned on a lathe.
Right.
The knights are generally hand carved.
Even on a piece, a set of pieces that they're all machined. You're saying that they'll still carve the knight by hand.
Yeah, because
it requires so much detail and stuff.
The pedestal, the base will be turned, typically round.
Right.
Turned, and then the knight will be screwed on there. That's where you get the term screwed knights.
Gotcha.
That's a typical term for a wooden chess set. And then the knights are generally hand carved. So if you take two knights and look at them, they're not exactly the same ever.
Very interesting.
Which is interesting, yeah. And sometimes makers will actually put different, make them, with different expressions on the knights. And if you have hand carved pieces where they actually have faces on them, they will all have like different expressions on their face throughout. They're very interesting then.
Like the kings and the queens and bishops and what have you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen those. I would say I love the, from a playing, a chess playing aspect, my personal preference, I do love the knight, but the rook is probably number 2 for me. I can recall when I played, I was really, really into using different strategies that involved both the rook and the knight because they're so powerful in combination. They can be, they're all powerful in their own way. It just depends on how you set up and prepare and execute. But yeah, great game. I love chess, man. It's a lot of fun to play. And yeah, thank you for introducing that to me at a young age, which I'm blessed to have been introduced to so many things that I feel like a lot of people typically aren't, having a father such as yourself, and that goes for, interesting games like chess and that kind of stuff all the way. Especially one of the major influences was music, of course.
Of course.
We're all musicians, if you didn't know. Randall, myself, and my father, we're all musicians. We all play music. We all love music of all kinds. And
I'm glad to see you developed a love for jazz.
Oh yeah, jazz. Jazz is fantastic. But for all music, we love it all. We jam. We have a great time. We love going to see music, and being so close to DC, it's a great opportunity to hear some of the greats play. It's definitely an awesome spot to be, as far as if you're into jazz. It's a great area to go hear some awesome live music.
Yes, it is. Yeah, we're blessed. I know New York City's got the biggest jazz scene probably, but
for sure,
DC's very intimate, small venues, great up close and personal. Get a lot of time to talk to the musicians in between sets or after the show, and they're all so cool. Everyone we've ever met in the jazz scene has just been really down to earth, super great people that just love the music and are masters at it and are just humble and just willing to talk, and they're just normal people that just have that gift and ability to become great and exceed past that plateau that we hit sometimes as musicians, and they get beyond, above and beyond. It's like once they get beyond that, they just the sky's the limit.
Right.
And it's a lot of work, lots and lots of work, and lots of study, and lots and lots of natural talent combined that makes people either good at a good musician or a great musician.
Yep.
And you have to devote so much. There's a lot of sacrifice to anything really that you want to become great at. It's kind of like been my sort of what would you call it? Motto, for lack of a better word, in life, that everything in life requires sacrifice. Everything, and I've come to realize that sacrifice is kind of like there's no way around it. So something has to be sacrificed for something else to excel. So what's it going to be? Who's going to sacrifice what?
Right. Where is the compromise taking place?
Yeah, and who's it affecting? So are you sacrificing yourself for someone else, or are you sacrificing someone else for you? So it's interesting. That's a whole topic, but I've come to realize that it's true. I've looked back on my life and thought how much I would, have enjoyed becoming a great musician. I had a lot of talent as a young kid getting into music, and just excelled, as Brandon did, way, way ahead of my class, and pretty much could play any instrument that I felt like I wanted to play, and could read music very easily, and had a love for music from a very early age. And but as I progressed in life and started a family, I realized that in order to go from pretty good to great, that I'd have to sacrifice something. And, realized that the sacrifice in that case, a lot of times, not with everybody, but in my case, would have been, my family. And so I put my family first and foremost, and, I don't regret any bit of it. I mean, that was the right thing to do, but not a great, fantastic musician either, which, the trade-off to me would have been not worth it.
And I thank you for that.
You're welcome. But,
as I directly benefited from that decision.
Yeah. But at least I was able to instill a love for music, and
absolutely,
for a lot of different things, music being one of them. And those of you who don't know, Brandon, excellent drummer, started out, got him a snare drum when he was, 8 years old, was it?
Around 6.
6 years old. And he always showed an interest in music. We always had guitars and different instruments laying around all the time. And he picked up on the drum, said he wanted to be a drummer. So I said, I always told my wife and myself that, whatever my kids wanted to play, whatever instrument they want to play, or whatever sport they want to play, I'd back them up 100%, wholeheartedly. And so when he said he wanted to become a drummer, I was so, delighted. I was happy about that. So got him a snare drum to start with, and got him started with some lessons with the rudiments, and getting him a good foundation. And
it was a great foundation. I had an excellent teacher. As I remember, you, along with the snare drum, you handed me some books to work on studying on my own, which I probably didn't get to for a couple of years.
Right.
Probably closer to around 10 years old. But I definitely, stuck with playing around on the snare drum and that kind of stuff, and that evolved into me trying to figure out how to read the music myself and practicing all of the fundamental rudiments of drumming, and then
And then listening to all the different drummers, I would point them out to you as you're
absolutely
young. Everything from the great bebop, hard bop, all the way up into fusion.
right.
And the combination of that and listen to all the usual stuff, rock and roll, the Beatles, starting with the Beatles and different bands.
Very, very wide
much
range
to a lot of people's
influence.
chagrin, I guess.
Yeah.
But, whatever. He still turned out all right.
I guess.
After that Beatle influence.
I'm not worshiping Satan, so it's a good thing.
You're not,
I guess.
recording.
Hey, if you want to worship Satan, it's fine. It's we're not gonna
we
talk
weren't
bad
talk
about you for that.
we're not gonna
Just
talk
all in
about
good
religion.
fun. No, we're not going there. At least not today.
Mhm.
But yeah, then I started taking professional lessons with a local guy. His name's Keith McMichael. He's a fantastic musician. He's, awesome, phenomenal drummer. He plays guitar and stuff like that too. He's a fantastic,
great guitar
player. Yeah, yeah. So if you're local and you're looking for lessons, we'll go ahead and shout out Mr. Keith McMichael, Drum and Guitar Workshop in Stevens City, Virginia. Really cool guy.
Right.
Give him a call. He's still doing lessons for sure. Comes highly recommended by myself, most definitely. Keith, if you're out there, hope you're enjoying the show. And
Keep drumming.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's turned out a lot of great musicians out of there that have gone on to college. In particular, Shenandoah University has a good music program there, and he's helped them get into that program and set a course for being a professional musician, which is great. Requires lots and lots of work, lots of study, and when you're young, you can sacrifice things like that for that. It's hard when you're older and you have a family started. But if you're young and that's your thing and you're going to college and you're studying that's when you can just practice all the time and just listen to all the styles and then develop your own. And start early and get into it. And don't wait till you're older, because it's much more difficult, and then then you have all these other commitments.
Yep, and responsibilities.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, it's a great thing though. Music is wonderful. For me personally, it's a form of one of the ultimate forms of self-expression for myself. My emotions come out when I play, and you can sense them, and it's a way for me to unwind, to play music, or to listen to music, and it's just a great thing, and it keeps your mind active if you're actively listening to technical music or any music and dissecting what each instrument is doing, and it definitely helps me in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and for me, it's always been I just enjoyed playing music, not necessarily live. I've always just played it for the sheer enjoyment and for the the self enjoyment, I guess, the rather than trying to become a performer. I just really enjoyed and was intrigued by the different instruments, and just kind of played for relaxation and never for I did I have been out and played in bands that performed out, but most of the time it's when we're at home and quiet and either playing alone and coming up with some riffs or something that you can get together with somebody later and kind of create some music. A lot of the great stuff just comes out at home, and we're playing with other people that know your style, and at the home studio, and you can, and they can help you. They can just take what you've got and expand it that much further, and then it becomes becomes a work of art with all these little different pieces put in. Everybody puts their own thing in there,
and I found that creativity sparks more creativity amongst
Absolutely.
people, which is really great. It's a total creation
creation fest.
Yeah,
Well,
creation
actually, that's
fest.
something else.
And
that goes back to the books I was reading.
Yeah, and talking about music and performing, Randall is actively in a really, really cool band called the Jack Dunlap Band.
Fantastic. I saw him for the first time, actually live for the first time, at a great venue in Warrenton. There's YouTube videos out there. Great little venue and a great show. Bunch of great musicians.
Yeah, they play a really interesting fusion of genres. They're really cool. They it's hard to describe. I don't even know what genre to classify them in. They definitely
it's unclassifiable.
It is. You just have to check them out. Check out the Jack Dunlap band on Spotify or wherever you listen to music at. They're everywhere, but they're great. And so, given Randall's accident,
were you going to give a shout out to all of his friends? I actually was supposed to appear at the show with a list of everyone. So this is for everyone who's listening to Randall. I talked to him before we came over, told him I'd be sitting in for him for a little while, at least for this show anyway, until he feels up to get in front of the mic again. And he said he wanted to say thanks to everybody who's been praying for him and thinking about him. And he actually wrote out he didn't actually write. He actually dictated. My wife wrote it out. She has a list, and I failed to bring it with me. Everyone included that he wanted to say thanks to a pile of people. But you know who you are. And so Randall was very humbled by all of the text and all the, I guess, the instant messaging or YouTube messaging, whatever you guys do these days. But he saw a pile of them coming in. He can't really focus on anything visual yet. TV, computer,
too
phone.
much stimulation for his brain.
Yeah, and it hurts his eyes. So he was. We were actually. He pulled out his phone and said, "Hey, go through this and tell me who all has been asking about me and all that kind of stuff." So there's a pile and a list of people, and he just wanted to just extend his thanks and love to you guys. You know who you are. Y'all know who you are.
Yep, he can feel the love, and he appreciates it, and he loves you guys right back, and we certainly appreciate it too. And so, since he's out of commission for a little while, like I said, he's in a band, and they perform all the time. So I felt extremely honored to be asked to sit in for him. He plays drums with this band, and so that's what I'll be doing. I'll be filling in for him until he's able and ready to go back to performing. So next weekend, I believe, they have a show in D.C. on Saturday night and then one in Winchester on Sunday night, so we'll be there. I'll also include when and where to both of those if you guys want to show up and
can you
check
put a
him
link
out.
to that on?
Yeah, I'll definitely include a link in the show notes, and I do believe we're going to try to organize some sort of...
That's a great thing, though, for you to be able to, fill in for Randall. I mean, what better person could possibly, fill in for Randall? No one could take his place, but, if you had to have, like, a substitute for a little while or something like that, I mean, who better than his brother?
Right.
Okay, because, you guys don't know the story, but I know the story of how Randall became a drummer. I mean, Brandon probably does by now too, but as it was happening, of course, they were both very, very young. So some of you don't know that early, there's 2 years difference between Randall and Brandon. And Brandon, obviously the older one, has always been what we refer to as Randall's spokesman. So he's always watched out for little Randall and always had his back and has always been there since Randall was born, literally. And we called him a spokesman because he wouldn't let Randall. Brandon was a little chatterbox, and he wouldn't let Randall. Randall's very quiet, sucked his thumb. Brandon was the complete talk show host.
That's right. You wanted to talk to him. You had to come speak with me about it first.
That's right.
Okay.
You want to talk to Randall? You got to get through Brandon first.
That's right.
So Brandon would literally speak for Randall. We didn't know he could talk for like the first 2 years. And he would introduce Randall and tell him that, this is my little brother, and I'm Brandon. This is Randall. He's my little brother. You got any questions, just ask me. I'll fill you in on the details. And he wouldn't let Randall speak. Randall would just kind of nod or smile, and he always had his thumb in his mouth. Yep. And so anyway, Brandon got the drum, became the drummer as Randall grew up. Randall was interested in, I'd always play my guitar in front of him and my bass and things like that. And Randall became a bass player. He took the bass, really became interested in it, played mine all the time. I got him a little Mustang bass, and he was just his size, and got him a real cool Hartkey amp setup and everything. And that, don't let me forget about the Hartkey. Remind me about Hartkey in a minute.
Hartkey.
Because that was great.
Got it.
There's a great story to go with that. But anyway, developed a love for the 4-string bass, and picked it up immediately, picked up playing it quite easily, and had a lot of great influences as well. But the interesting thing is, this was going along. We had guitars laying around. He'd sometimes pick up a guitar and play on that too. But when Brandon wasn't around, Randall would be sneaking onto his drum set and playing. And what would he do? He would hear Brandon play, and then he'd say, I can do that. So Randall, of course, learns everything by ear, and, just has this great memory that he can, play by ear, whether it's drums or, the rhythm or the musical melody, whether it's a melody instrument, so piano or anything. So he basically got lessons from Brandon.
Without me knowing.
Without Brandon knowing it. And he kind of slid that in there, and then one day said, hey, look, Brandon, I can play drums too. And Brandon thought he just learned overnight, but he had been teaching himself, listening to Brandon when Brandon wasn't around.
I did embrace it at that point and showed him a thing or two.
Of course. He did not.
Let me get a shot of that coffee.
Student did not become the master, but Randall's a pretty good drummer, and
thank you.
It's a pretty amazing way to learn the drums, and never had any official lessons. Now, Brandon later gave Randall some rudimentary lessons and fundamentals and things like that, but he developed his own style of playing.
Definitely, very cool style.
Yeah, and then of course Randall played with me in the praise and worship band for a couple of years.
Right.
So that kind of gave him that feel for, you got to kind of adapt with whatever music that you're playing. It might not be your favorite kind of music to play.
Sure, but being well-rounded.
We say it exactly.
Exactly.
That is quite strange.
Well-rounded. Being well-rounded is such an important...
Father Clone edition.
Such an important thing. For a musician, I feel like there's nothing worse than being, having limitations at all in any aspect of life, especially music, because there's just a limitless amount of music out there, styles of music. So why limit yourself to one thing? And I'm fairly certain that most musicians are quite open-minded and well-rounded. The majority of musicians listen to such a broad variety of music. How could you not? There's so much great music out there,
and that's what
both from the past and being made now.
Right. And I always tried to, keep you guys exposed to as many different genres out there from the very get-go. Everything from, like I said, Beatles, rock, bluegrass, the bluegrass, everything to back to their fundamental roots. So, bluegrass, we were listening to Bill Monroe. I've got a mandolin. I'm picking around on the mandolin. If I'm playing the harmonica, we're listening to Sonny Boy Williamson. If I'm fooling around on the bass, we're listening to Jaco Pastorius or someone like that, some Weather Report. We're listening to jazz. We're listening to Art Blakey. Or, we're going back and listening to,
digging into the archives.
From
the heart and soul.
Blues all the way up.
Yeah.
And everything included, country.
Southern rock.
Southern rock.
Progressive rock.
Yeah, everything, and metal, everything.
There were no limits.
No limits.
That's the way it should be.
Absolutely, you can't be closed-minded about it. Now, that's the music and the musicianship. Certainly, there's lyrics, and just as there's books written that I wouldn't care for, or lyrics or
personal
topics that I wouldn't be interested in. But from a musical standpoint and just from the sheer musicianship, it's amazing. Even the different genres. If you were to ask a professional musician of any genre what their influences were, they're going to tell you the same thing. I listened to everything. I listened to the radio.
Yeah, for the most part.
My dad played a lot of this. My mom listened to a lot of that.
Right. a conglomeration of different influences, and that makes a good musician, you know.
It's some of the greatest guitar players that I know. One of my favorite guitar players, Dwayne Frederick.
Yes.
Just a great player, natural singer, and songwriter. He told me when I asked him how he learned to play guitar, he said, I would just turn on the radio, like an AM radio back then. And I had a cheap little guitar, Sears guitar or something. And he said I would just play along with whatever was on the radio, just whatever came on, and play with it. And then every day for hours.
Wow.
And then you figure down the road he could pretty much play any, he was very well-rounded. And then, of course, later picked out his favorites and learned to kind of, has interesting kind of pick and finger. He has uses a pick and his fingers at the same time. And
wow, that's cool.
Does a finger picking, flat picking sort of
combination.
Yeah. Sort of a cross picking type of thing. It's kind of it's a really cool style.
That's interesting to watch.
Yeah, not totally unique. A lot of guys play that way, but everyone has their own influence. So
right.
So it's going to be that style maybe with a certain influence.
Yeah.
So,
that's cool.
Which is neat.
That's really cool. This has been a really interesting episode. It got pretty personal. You guys know a little bit more about the family, about us now, me and Randall. So that's kind of cool. I feel more connected to you guys already. And so,
physically, mentally, and spiritually.
Mr. Mark Randall Witherspoon, Father Grime, thanks so much for coming on the show today. Like I said, I'm certain this will not be the last time that we hear from you, and we can't wait to bring you on again, actually, Randall included. It'll be nice to have the trio. I don't know if the world's ready for that much Witherspoon.
Well, at least there'd be a voice in between that we'd have to put him in the center channel, I guess.
We'll stick him somewhere. We can fit that dude anywhere. He weighs like 100 pounds.
Yeah, put him in a guitar case, carry him around. Go in my dobro case. I think he could fit in my dobro case.
He probably
I'm pretty
could.
sure.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But I'm honored to be able to sit in for my boy Randall.
Yeah,
and Randy. I call him Randy.
Yeah,
I'm the only
Randy.
one allowed to call him Randy. But,
that's right.
I've heard other people try to do it, but don't do it quite as well as I do. And just honored to fill in for Randall. Hoping he can get back in here soon. He's quite the wit.
Indeed.
And he's a good contrast to Brandon. And they just got a lot of great stuff, a lot of great stories of just their childhood up till now that really interesting. And just thanks for inviting me in here.
Oh, love to have you.
And I've been looking forward to it. I was looking forward to being on your show just to, bring some interesting topics to the table. I didn't even think at all I'd be sitting in for Randall. So it really hit me spur of the moment, just all of a sudden out of the blue, hey, you want to do the show tomorrow? And of course I said sure, but I was wanting to try to maybe come to the table with some really cool, interesting topics. But hey,
that's life. You got to jump in, be creative.
That's right.
Yeah, you'll be prepared next time. We'll give you a little bit more of a notice next time. How's that?
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, it's been great. Thanks for taking the time.
Anytime.
And so before we end this episode, I'd like to remind you guys out there listening that if you enjoy our show, please give us a review and rate the show on iTunes. It helps us out big time.
Absolutely. We appreciate those of you who have been listening, and we hope you enjoy the content as much as we enjoy bringing it to you.
Hey, if you made it this far, thanks so much for tuning in. We really hope you enjoyed the show.
Stay grimy.